disturbing find in the Hamptons, a canal full of tens of thousands of dead fish. What could have caused this? CBS 2's Alice Gaynor in the newsroom with more for us. Alice.
Christine, this massive die-off involves bunker fish in the Shinnecock Canal in Hampton Bays. Quite a sight for many to behold. Dead fish as far as the eye can see.
There are thousands and thousands of them down there.
The sight forced many to do a double take.
I thought it was frost in the morning.
Many couldn't believe what they were seeing and smelling, lining up to watch and take pictures.
First time I've seen this in my whole life.
They're not just floating on top of the water, they're actually stepping from the bottom up.
The bunker fish were in the Shinnecock Canal this morning, but then the locks were opened and out they went into the bay.
They're all dead up on the beach and in the water behind the building.
I actually talked to a couple of DEC officers today. They said they'd never seen it bad before.
The DEC, or State Department of Environmental Conservation, says it's investigating.
On Monday night, many parts of the world experienced a rare sight of the supermoon, the largest, brightest full moon in nearly 7 decades. However, because of the stronger force of the moon pulling the ocean, Korea's Ministry of Public Safety and Security has warned those along the coast to be on guard against rising sea levels. The ministry says that over the next 3 days, water levels will rise along the seashores when the tide is in. Sea levels are expected to rise by up to 10 meters in Mokpo City and Pyeongtaek City and by 4 meters in Dongyang and Gohung cities. The sea level around Jeju Island is also expected to reach an all-time high.
Flooding concerns. New fears tonight. The water will rise again in some South Florida neighborhoods. It's all because of the supermoon. The next high tide is in about 2 hours, and even in places that are used to occasional street flooding, there's a different kind of worry tonight because of the supermoon. We have CBS 4 team coverage beginning with Ted Scouten, who is live in Fort Lauderdale. Ted.
Hi, Elliot. Well, people who run these businesses here along Las Olas Boulevard, they're very concerned about what's going to happen tonight. They said flooding was already bad this morning. You can see that there are sandbags set up in front of all these businesses here, getting ready for the next high tide, which, as you said, expected in just a couple of hours. The moon over South Florida was incredible overnight, but with that beauty comes trouble.
It looks like we have about 6 inches.
Some streets in Coconut Grove were flooded because that supermoon and its gravitational pull caused king tides. On Las Olas in Fort Lauderdale, high ocean tides brought water over the seawall or bubbling up out of the storm drains. There was even a fish on land.
So we just deal with the rising floodwaters coming down the Isles.
Julie Hager lives in the Las Olas Isles. At this time of year, she knows she has to adjust her driving schedule so she's not up against high tides and high water. Sometimes they can't get out of their driveways.
Our morning coffee commute tends to get our feet wet, but you feel sorry for the commuters who actually have to drive through it with their cars, because I'm sure it takes its toll on the underside.
Closer to the beach on Las Olas, businesses are impacted.
It gets almost half to the bags. To the sandbags.
Mehdi Idris works at FG Salon. He and neighboring businesses use sandbags to stop water from getting in. Today, they had to nearly shut down.
And take a look at this. Not everywhere on the beach avoided a little flooding. You can see what appears to be an octopus and some water in the middle of a parking garage. Now, this is below a building on Miami Beach.
Take a look at what we saw here in New York this Monday morning, 6:22 a.m. That supermoon, it looks like a movie when you see that plane go right by. Just gorgeous.
2016 has been hot. So hot, in fact, that it's very likely it will be the hottest year on record. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've had extreme highs. 2014 and 2015 also had record-breaking temperatures, and a report from the World Meteorological Organization predicts the trend is just going to continue. The organization reports temperatures are about 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial temperatures. And that's pretty significant because it puts Earth's climate really, really close to the threshold noted in the Paris Climate Agreement signed last year. In that deal, countries pledged to work together to cap temperature increases at 1.5 degrees Celsius. The report says an El Nino event is partly to blame for the heat wave. The event caused sea levels to rise 15 millimeters between November 2014 and February 2016 and contributed to coral bleaching.
Shocking images out of China show the effect drought has had on the country's largest freshwater lake. The Poyang Lake in China's northern province of Jiangxi was once 3 times the size of Los Angeles, but a lack of rainfall since September has caused much of the water to dry up. Pictures show people walking across the lake bed, cattle grazing on grass, and boats stranded on dry ground. The Lixingdan Island once served as a lighthouse, but is now surrounded by grassland. Local rice farmers who rely on the lake to water their crops could suffer, along with populations of fish, shrimp, and the endangered finless porpoise. It's important to note that the size of the lake often changes depending on the season, but has been shrinking earlier each year since 1952.
Fires rage in at least 4 southern states, and Tennessee remains under a state of emergency. Now, the smoke to our east is causing trouble in the mid-state. News Channel 5's Emily Luxon has more on how our area is now under an air quality alert. Emily.
Well, that's right. Middle Tennessee is currently under a code orange air quality alert. And our just say this basically means people who suffer from asthma or COPD need to limit their time outdoors and take precautions.
A fire started over there. We were over there fighting a fire with shovels and rakes.
It's becoming a common sight across Tennessee. Wildfires and smoky, hazy air.
We do have a huge problem with brush fires getting started.
This air quality alert is due to the wildfires that are going on.
For Vanderbilt University Medical Center allergist Dr. Jonathan Hemler, the fires are fueling phone calls and office visits.
The South has been hit by more than 70 fires stretching across 8 southern states, including North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, which have already charred more than 100,000 acres and forced evacuations, reports CBS News correspondent Mark Strassman. Dry weather and drought conditions are fueling an outbreak of wildfires across the South, and thousands of firefighters are working to put out the flames. In North Carolina, flames are threatening at least 1,700 structures. More than 20 wildfires are burning there, many of them being investigated for suspected arson.
Some 1,200 tourists were reportedly stranded in Kaikoura, a popular tourist destination on the country's South Island, famous for its coastal scenery. It was 100 kilometers from the epicenter of the quake. Some Chinese tourists were on a road trip when it struck. They spent a terrifying night in their coach. One of them had a slight head injury.
We were lying on the ground. We didn't know the quake's magnitude, and the ground was shaking a lot.
The youngest was just 5 years old.
We were all transferred to a hillside as we are concerned about a tsunami or a landslide.
They managed to get in contact with the consulate before the batteries in their phones expired.
Land routes have all been blocked with the possible danger of a tsunami. The sea route was also not available.
19 trips were made by 5 helicopters to get them to safety. Meanwhile, New Zealand's Prime Minister expressed his concern that its tourism industry, the country's biggest export earner, would take a hit from the devastating images that were being splashed across television screens around the world.
It's a disease thought to have been wiped out in medieval times, but leprosy seems to still exist in the UK. It's just carried by something much smaller than a human. A new study published in the journal Science says British red squirrels are infected with strains of the bacterium that causes leprosy. Scientists first noticed the disease in 2014. They were looking at red squirrels living in Scotland and noticed that some had growths on their snout and ears. Anna Meredith from the University of Edinburgh told the BBC that her team found one form of leprosy among red squirrels living in Scotland and a different form among squirrels living on a remote island off southern England. They also found that both forms can infect humans.
Every person in one town, nearly 30,000 people, are being told to have their blood tested after potentially cancer-causing chemicals were found in their drinking water. This is happening in our northern suburbs, Newburgh, in Orange County, New York. Here's CBS 2's Scott Rappaport.
Stop in the Broadway coffee shop in Newburgh and talk to the locals.
Everyone is concerned about their health.
It is the only thing folks are talking about.
I have to get a blood test.
How do you feel about that?
I'm not too happy.
Yes, residents in this Hudson Valley city are now being told to have their blood tested after long-held fears by some that their tap water may have been exposed to a chemical reportedly linked to cancer.
I was just coming to get filtered, specially treated water from the doctor over here.
Starting on November 1st, New York State officials started offering blood tests to Newburgh's 28,000 residents at 2 local medical facilities after high levels of PFOS, or perfluorooctane sulfides, a chemical used for firefighting at a nearby Air Force base, were found in the city's drinking water, exceeding federal guidelines.
We don't know anything. They don't tell us anything. All we know is that it's bad now. Nobody coming brings no emergency water.
It is a scary scenario for residents who've had concerns about contamination here since a state of emergency was issued back in May after the chemical was found in the water. The city shifted to a new water source, but the worries here continue to linger. I asked the city manager about it.
How bad is this? I do not know how bad it is. We will know once we get blood test results back.
Although there was no blood testing done today, the tests are free and will run through November 19th.
7 Pakistani soldiers who were killed in overnight shelling by Indian troops in the disputed Kashmir region have been buried. The soldiers were buried in the northern Punjab province of Pakistan in the presence of the country's army chief. Earlier, Islamabad confirmed the deaths of 7 of its soldiers in what are called unprovoked Indian firing at the line of control in the disputed Kashmir region. The deaths mark the biggest single-day loss that Pakistan has suffered since the latest outbreak of violence erupted between the two countries. Relations between the two nuclear-armed neighbors plummeted last month following a deadly attack on an Indian army camp in Kashmir, in which New Delhi blames on Islamabad. Pakistan has denied involvement in the attack. India responded with what are called strikes inside Pakistan, targeting terrorist elements. The Muslim-majority Kashmir was divided between India and Pakistan after the two countries gained independence from British rule in 1947.
Anti-Hong Kong independence, support the basic law. Shouting the main slogan, the rally was building in momentum on Sunday afternoon. Organizers said around 50,000 people packed into Tamar Park near the Legislative Council complex.
I am a native Hong Kong man. I was born here. We are all China's people.
50,000 of us gathered here today with one voice. Hong Kong independence, if we do not oppose it now, given time, with the support of foreign forces, will become something like Tibetan independence. To suppress Hong Kong independence now is the best and only chance we have. If we don't oppose it now, we will certainly regret it later. The recent basic law interpretation by China's lawmakers says that Hong Kong legislators-elect must properly take their oaths to uphold the One China, Two Systems policy before they take their positions. The move is in response to an incident last month when 2 lawmakers-elect made derogatory remarks about the country during their oath-taking. The protesters also demand the disqualification of any legislators-elect who refuse to respect the One China principle.
The U.S. has agreed to resettle refugees being held in Australia's controversial island detention camps. The number of refugees being resettled was not announced, but reports say the deal would be offered first to those who are most vulnerable, particularly families. Australia has a strict policy that bars migrants who come illegally by boat from settling in the country. Those that do are automatically placed in detention camps located on several different islands. Australia has faced a lot of criticism for housing refugees on the islands. Human rights groups have accused the government of ignoring alleged inhumane treatment of the people forced to live there. Some have suggested people smugglers will use the deal as a ploy to bring more asylum seekers to Australia.
While a top German newspaper quotes intelligence reports that Islamic State has been teaching its fighters how to behave like refugees. ISIL's apparently trained its fighters to apply for asylum, as well as explaining how to reply under police interrogation. Let's discuss the potential terrorism threat now. I'm joined live by Rainer Rupp, who's a former German intelligence officer. Welcome, Rainer. Surely this is a huge terrorist threat to Europe if this German intelligence is correct. What do you make of this information?
If the BND is correct, it is a huge threat, but it's basically not new.
There are thousands and thousands of them down there.
The sight forced many to do a double take.
I thought it was frosted in the morning.
Many couldn't believe what they were seeing and smelling, lining up to watch and take pictures.
First time I've seen this in my whole life.
They're not just floating on top of the water, they're actually stepping from the bottom up.
The bunkerfish were in the Shinnecock Canal this morning, but then the locks were opened and out they went into the bay.
They're all dead up on the beach and in the water behind the building.
I actually talked to a couple of DEC officers today. They said they'd never seen it bad before.
The DEC, or State Department of Environmental Conservation, says it's investigating.
Tens of thousands of dead fish. What could have caused this? CBS 2's Alice Gaynor in the newsroom with more for us. Alice.
Christine, this massive die-off involves bunkerfish in the Shinnecock Canal and Hampton Bays. Quite a sight for many to behold. Dead fish as far as the eye can see.
Disturbing find in the Hamptons, a canal full of.
On Monday night, many parts of the world experienced a rare sight of the supermoon, the largest, brightest full moon in nearly 7 decades. However, because of the stronger force of the moon pulling the ocean, Korea's Ministry of Public Safety